Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where you send us the things you're reading, thinking about, articles, essays, you name it, and we dig in.
We pull out the core ideas, the stuff that really matters, so you get the gist quickly.
Exactly, sifting through it all. And today, wow, we've got a really fascinating character study based on an essay someone sent in.
Oh, yeah.
It's about Private Leonard Lawrence, Gomer Pyle from Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
Pyle. A memorable character for sure.
Definitely. And this essay analyzes him using the Enneagram framework. Specifically, it makes a case for him being a self-preservation type 9.
Okay, interesting. So for listeners maybe less familiar, the Enneagram is basically a model of personality. 9 core types, each with different motivations, fears, ways of seeing the world.
Right. And our mission today, our deep dive, is to explore Pyle's really tragic story through that specific lens, the self-preservation 9. What does it tell us about his psychology and maybe about that personality type under, well, extreme stress?
Sounds like a heavy but important topic. Where does the essay start?
It kicks off with the core passion of type 9, which the Enneagram calls sloth. But crucially, it's not just about being lazy, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a common misconception. Enneagram sloth is more like psychological inertia, a kind of going to sleep to oneself, a resistance to inner experience, a narcotization of consciousness, as the essay puts it.
Archetypization. That fits. When you think about Pyle, there's that constant vacant look, isn't there? Those slow responses when Sergeant Artman is just screaming at him. It's like he's buffering or something.
Yeah, disconnection. And the essay really zooms in on the self-preservation subtype, the SP9.
Yeah.
Their specific way of dealing with this core sloth often involves something called appetite.
Appetite, as in food.
Well, yeah, often literally. It's like the underlying hunger for connection, for peace, for just being gets kind of rerouted into physical appetites. Comfort eating, collecting things, focusing on physical comfort.
Ah, okay. The donuts. I knew that had to mean something more. Him hiding the donuts in his footlocker.
That's the classic example the essay uses. It's presented not just as, wanting a snack, but as a displacement activity, a way to physically soothe an emotional or existential lack he can't quite face.
So it's like filling an inner void with something tangible.
Precisely. And the essay connects this to how SP9s can sometimes relate to their own bodies, feeling disconnected through the body. It mentions the famous jelly donut scene, of course.
Right, the collective punishment.
And even Pyle's build, sort of heavier. The essay suggests this can be characteristic. The body as a kind of shelter, maybe?
Yeah.
But maybe also a prison, reinforcing that inertia.
Wow. Okay, so moving beyond sloth and appetite, the essay talks about self-erasure, this profound sense of just not being there internally. Paucity of inner experiences, I think was the phrase.
Yes, that's a key theme for the UDA9, especially the SP. That blankness, even when he's being utterly humiliated, is presented as a survival mechanism.
Tuning out.
Exactly. Tuning out the unbearable reality. It's a core defense strategy, this narcotization we mentioned. The essay says it's like coloring reality without actually changing it, making it bearable by numbing oneself to it.
And that scene, gosh, it's hard to forget, where he's forced to march with his pants down, sucking his thumb. How does that fit in?
The essay sees that as a very typical 9-cert response to being completely overwhelmed. It's regression.
Like going back to childhood.
Yeah, retreating to a simpler, less threatening state. Seeking basic comfort when adult coping mechanisms just completely fail under that kind of pressure.
Okay. Now, this next point feels really crucial. The essay argues that a defining pattern for the 9SP is how they break down. It's not gradual adjustments, but something else.
Right. It's this pattern of suppressing anger, avoiding conflict, resisting small changes, basically bottling everything up.
Until
it explodes like a pressure cooker, as the essay vividly puts it later. This avoidance of small frictions paradoxically leads to a catastrophic release.
And that's directly linked to Pyle's final actions in the bathroom. His inability to process all that rage and humiliation incrementally.
Exactly. The essay argues that final violence isn't some sudden personality switch, like he becomes a different Enneagram type.
Right. Sometimes people might see that outburst and think maybe he's an 8, the challenger type.
Yeah, the essay addresses that possibility. It clarifies that while the final actions are aggressive, that kind of irritability, that sudden forcefulness, can actually be part of the 9SP pattern when they finally erupt after extreme prolonged suppression. It's the dam breaking.
It's the culmination, not a transformation.
That's the argument, yes.
Okay. Another big type 9 theme is fusion, right? Merging with others, losing their own sense of self. How does that play out for the self-preservation 9 according to the source?
Well, for the SP9, that merging tendency often attaches to things that promise security. So it might be merging with routines, with possessions, or very significantly with authority or systems.
Ah, like the Marines itself
Hmm.
or Sergeant Hartman?
Potentially both. But the essay really highlights Pyle's relationship with his rifle, Charlene.
Oh, yeah. This is my rifle, this is my gun. That whole mantra, it's almost creepy how attached he becomes.
It's presented as a perfect example of merging identity with an external object that represents structure, power, maybe even belonging within that brutal system. He becomes the good Marine embodied by the rifle.
And his desperate attempts to please Hartman, even after all the abuse.
That also fits. It's that 9 pattern of self-erasure, adapting completely to external demands to find safety or acceptance, losing oneself to fit in.
The essay used a striking term, sacrificial, like the SP9 sacrifices the self and offers that very act of self-renunciation.
That's a powerful way to frame it, yeah. That deep struggle to hold on to a core identity when the drive is to merge for security.
And this connects to his struggles in training too, doesn't it? His slowness, the constant mistakes. It's not just ineptitude.
The essay suggests it's also tied to that core 9 resistance to change.
Resistance to change. How so? He's in boot camp, the ultimate forced change.
But internally, accepting change, truly adapting, can feel really threatening for a 9. The essay explains it can raise fundamental questions about reality, about their own place, leading to a fear of disorientation. They prefer the known, even if it's unpleasant.
So his difficulty isn't just physical or intellectual, it's a psychological resistance to being pushed out of his comfort zone, even a miserable one.
Exactly. A difficulty adapting to an environment that demands constant self-assertion and change. And think about the food again, continuing to hide it despite the punishments. It looks like stubbornness, but it could also be that deep inertia, resisting the change in rules.
Wow. Okay. And layered underneath all this, the essay mentions low self-esteem and, interestingly, gullibility.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
SP9s often struggle with really low self-worth, and that connects to the gullibility. They tend to readily believe negative things about themselves, accept blame, assume accusations are true.
We definitely see that with Pyle. He just absorbs Hartman's tirades, the group punishments.
He internalizes it all, takes it as his fault, doesn't really fight back internally or externally.
That awful blanket party scene, he just lies there and takes it.
The essay points to that as a key moment. It's not just about being physically unable to fight back. It's interpreted as part of that deep pattern of self-abnegation, of invalidating his own perceptions, his own right to not be treated that way. It's profound self-invalidation, not just fear.
Okay, so let's really focus again on that core dynamic. The suppression leading to the explosion. You mentioned the pressure cooker analogy from the essay.
Yes, it's central to understanding the 9SP breakdown pattern, according to this analysis. It's about the consequences of not dealing with things incrementally.
Can you recall that quote? It sounded powerful.
Yeah, it was something like, resisting real change requires a lot of mental work and abdominal control. Hence, one day it may happen that, not having made small and substantial changes, it explodes like a pressure cooker and acts without thinking, sweeping away everything.
Sweeping away everything. That certainly describes the end result for Pyle. It really paints his final actions as, well, almost inevitable given the buildup.
That's the core argument. Not a random act of madness, but the catastrophic release valve for unbearable, unexpressed pressure within that specific personality structure.
And one last piece the essay touches on is boundary issues and lack of self-contact.
Right. Difficulty understanding limits for themselves, for others, with the world, and a profound disconnect from their own internal states, especially anger.
The boundarylessness seems clear with the eating, maybe the trouble following rules, precisely the lack of assertion.
Exactly. Trouble knowing where they end and the world begins, in a psychological sense. And that ties into the anger issue. Because they're often so out of touch with their own anger, they don't recognize it building.
They don't see the warning signs in themselves?
Precisely. Until it's too late. The essay points to that final scene in the latrine, again, Pyle talking to himself, loading the rifle, but with that completely vacant expression.
Total dissociation.
Yeah, like he's not even fully present in the moment of his most decisive, devastating action. A complete break from self-contact at the critical point.
Wow. So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the essay really portrays Pyle's story as a tragically clear example of the Enneagram self-preservation type 9 disintegrating under impossible pressure.
Yes, the argument is compelling. His final violence isn't seen as him becoming something else. but as the most extreme, shattering expression of his core 9SP dynamics. It's the repressed finally erupting.
It's a sobering analysis, and it leaves you wondering, doesn't it, about less extreme versions of this pattern.
Absolutely.
How often might we see, similar dynamics of suppression and then sudden outbursts, maybe smaller ones, thankfully in ourselves or people we know, when that basic need for self-presence, for acknowledging our own feelings, isn't met?
What are those smaller explosions in everyday life? It's a really provocative thought to leave with. What happens when we or others consistently numb out or avoid inner conflict?
Definitely food for thought. Well, thank you for exploring that with us. A really insightful look at a complex character through the specific lens.
Glad to discuss it. It's a powerful application of the Enneagram model.
Indeed. Join us next time for another deep dive.